In this session, we're going to talk about developing the trot. And I have Julia here and her new horse, Coast, who's a thoroughbred, to help with the lesson. Say hi to the folks.
Hi.
Hi, folks. So, of the 3 gaits, the trot is the easiest to develop. So we're going to talk, number 1, about the working trot, and number 2, the lengthening that's developed from the working trot. So you can't develop a lengthening until you first have a good working trot. So I'm going to talk about the 3 criteria that make up a working trot. And then if you have a horse like Coast or any type of non-warm blood type of horse that by nature doesn't have a big trot, there's a lot of things that you can do to help develop the quality of the trot. And then once you develop the quality of the working trot, you can begin to develop lengthenings. But first, I'd like you to demonstrate, just go in a circle in working trot. I'll come into the center of your circle. Working trot rising, and I just want to talk generally about the qualities. That's very nice, just like that, no different than that. Okay, so here are the 3 things as you watch Coast and Julia. Here are the 3 criteria that make up a good working trot. Number 1, the horse is regular in the rhythm. Remember, regularity is our first ingredient in the training scale. And you can see it's 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Very regular in the rhythm. The second criterion is that there's at least sufficient, it doesn't have to be huge, but at least sufficient impulsion in the trot that she wouldn't have to rev him up to get a little bit bigger of a trot. So let's see that. Next time you're at the open, as you cross the center line here, close your legs and see if he can give you a slightly bigger trot. So close your legs, and there he goes, and tell him, good boy, that was super. So there are degrees of impulsion, and one of the definitions of working trot is that it's the gait where the horse most easily presents himself in the best balance. So you might start off a little sub-power in the beginning, but you at least want to have sufficient power within the trot that when you ask a question, you get an answer. And the third criterion is that the horse does what we call tracking up. And you can see that his hind hoofs fall directly into the track made by the front feet. So he is successfully fulfilling the qualities of a good working trot. He's in good balance, he has a regular rhythm, he has sufficient impulsion to show a little more lengthening over the ground without her having to rev him up first, and he's tracking up. That's awesome. So just walk for a second, let him catch his breath while I explain what we're going to do next. You can keep walking on the circle. So Coast actually, for a thoroughbred, has quite a nice trot, but a lot of thoroughbred type horses and non-warm blood breeds have a trot that's a little too short and a little too quick. And if their working gait, their working trot is too short and quick, you know when you ask for the lengthening of that working gait, you're going to get more shortness, more quickness, more like a little sewing machine. So a lot of times the tendency for people when a horse doesn't have a big working trot by nature is they push the horse and they try to drive the horse to longer strides. But we're going to problem solve here from the other point of view. We're going to take his natural working trot, and I'm going to have Julia make the tempo too slow on purpose. Slow the tempo down. And while you're slowing don't do it yet, while you're slowing the tempo down, you're going to focus on your posting. How long you stay up in the air and then you come down, and how long you stay up in the air. Because that posting is going to be the same as the horse's tempo. Then in your sub-power trot, you're going to strive to post the same way, no quicker, but ask him to take longer strides in the slower tempo. Now, when you do this with your horse and you ask for the longer strides, if they automatically get quick again, immediately go sub-power, reestablish that tempo that's a little bit too slow, and then strive to get 2 or 3 strides that are just a hair longer in that slower tempo. Good thoroughbred horse. Very good flight reaction. The scary cougar came down the road. Good boy goes. He said, I'm going to make sure I stay safe. He's got great survival instincts. So Julia, first pick up that working trot that we had a second ago so we can see a difference when you make the trot sub-power. Good, that's beautiful. Now go really, really slowly. Yeah, good, super. And feel how long you have to stay in the air, even slower. Slow, yeah, and stay in the air, stay in the air. Now, at that tempo, ask him to take longer strides, and you can tell that he's staying in the same tempo if your post stays the same. Super. You see how long you're in the air? It feels like forever. And then again, slow him down and rise high. Almost stand straight up over, over the pommel. And now keep this same tempo and make longer strides. This time see if you can make them even a little longer, but rise high. Yeah, good, rising high. Bring those hips up under your shoulder and a little more forward in that same tempo. Good. And again, little tiny sub-power western jog trot and stand straight up in your iron, slower, slower, slow. There you go, even slower. Exaggerate it for me, slower. Yeah, good, good. That's fine. That will happen too. We want to show the mistakes. That will happen too, and that's no big deal. Yep, slow, 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 so that he physically has time to come under with his hind leg. Slow, don't let him speed up yet. Slower, slower, slower. From your tummy muscles and your out, yeah. And now longer strides in that tempo. Keep rising the same way. Push toward, yeah, beautiful, and tell him good boy. And walk and pet him. So if you have a horse that by nature is too quick and short and tight, and coast is certainly not bad, but we do want to develop the trot on all the horses. One of our goals with dressage is to make the horse a better mover. So if you ask the horse to show you a bigger, more expressive trot, and all he does is get quicker and shorter and choppier, do the opposite. Go too slowly, get a sense of the timing by staying in the air longer with your posting, and then close your legs and ask for longer strides in that slower tempo. So that's one really good way to develop the trot. Now, there's lots of other things we can do to develop the trot with the horse that does not by nature have a big trot. And one of the things that we can do is use trotting poles. If you look here, I have trotting poles set up in 2 different places. Here I have them on a circle. We're going to do this second. And this is great if you don't have someone to help you adjust the poles, because the poles are closer together on one end and a little bit further apart on the other end. So depending on how you want to make your horse's strides longer and longer and longer, you can either trot through the poles a little bit toward the inside to the right, or you can go through the middle, or you can go on the outer edge. The poles for horses, on average, you would set them up about 4.5 feet apart, and as you spread them out a little bit, you would spread them out to about inch by inch to about 5 feet apart to make the trot bigger. Now, if you have a nice helpful ground person, let me show you these poles over here, which Julia's going to do first. She's just going to come on a diagonal line, and these poles are set up at 4.5 feet apart. So just cut across the ring there and pick up rising trot. I know it's a little bit of a tight turn for you, and just do rising trot through the poles. So plan your turn way down in the corner so you can turn early enough so it doesn't feel too sharp. These poles are 4.5 feet apart, and she's going to rise nice and high through the poles to help Coast get a bigger trot. Beautiful, beautiful. And you can see he could actually deal, keep trotting, Julia, he could actually deal with those poles being a little bit further apart. Come on the circle. Come through the middle of the poles, which is about the same distance as the poles you just went through. It's about 4.5 feet apart. Okay, now come around again and go on the outer rim of the poles, which is about 5 feet apart, so that we develop that trot so he takes bigger, longer strides. Outer rim of the circle. Yes. There, did you feel that? That was good. Do that again. So between the second and third pole, he took a bigger step. Did you feel that? Yep. Let's see if we can get that through the whole thing. Stay on the outer rim and big trot through the poles. Beautiful. Tell him good boy. Walk for a second. I'm just going to make this just a hair wider even because he's doing that fairly easily. Okay, so now it's a couple inches wider. Go trot big on the outside of the pole. Let's see if we can make his trot a little bigger even. Rising high. Beautiful. Once more. It's so pretty I just want to see it again. Just like that. So that the horse learns to feel his potential, that he has a greater period of suspension in the trot. Oh, missed that one, missed your rhythm. Come once more, because that's what makes the trot expressive, that period of suspension. The longer the horse stays with his legs off the ground, the more expressive the trot looks like. Good. Beautiful, beautiful. Did you feel that? And then walk and pat him. And you can even, if you have cavalettes, you can put the cavalettes up fairly low and they'll pick up their legs even more, but everything gradual. Now the last exercise I would like you to do, and this is not only good as far as developing the trot, so that eventually your horse knows that when you close your legs he can shift into overdrive and give you a lengthening, but it's just a good strengthening exercise. And that's, if you're lucky like we are and you have hills, that's to trot up hills. And ideally we would like the horse, as far as a strengthening exercise, to be a little bit round. We don't want the reins to be loose and floppy, so you want them a little bit on the bit. So what I'm going to ask Julia to do now is to just trot right out of the arena and up that hill and ask for the big trot going up the hill. Good. Great strengthening exercise, the hills, and it's more natural for the horse to push from behind as she goes up the hill. So she develops not only his working trot, but she develops his ability to lengthen. That looks super. Today we're going to continue with developing the trot. And I have Megan Maurice to help me, and she has a wonderful Connemara named Celebrity here to show you how you can really develop the trot on a horse that by nature doesn't have a big trot. Now the other day you saw with Julia and Coast how we took a trot that was okay, slowed down the tempo, and then in that slower tempo asked for longer strides. And she did a great job with that. But I wanted to demonstrate, or have Megan demonstrate with Celebrity, that same exercise for you, because I think that you're going to see a really huge difference with Celebrity. So he's going to start off just rising trot, whichever way you want to go, in kind of a little pony trot. And remember our criteria for working gaits, that the horse is in a regular rhythm, he has enough impulsion that if you asked him for longer strides, just stay on a circle, that's perfect. If you ask for longer strides, he could give them to you, and the horse tracks up. And you can see, because by nature he has a little trot, he doesn't track up. His hind feet fall behind the footprints made by the front feet. And this is by nature how the horse trots, and probably a lot of you have horses that trot like this. Different breeds, like quarter horses, might trot like this. So what you want to do, since the trot is the easiest gait to develop, is that you want to make the trot bigger, more expressive. So what Megan's going to do is demonstrate the exercise that Julia did, which is to, rather than over push the horse in the beginning, she's actually going to slow the tempo down now so that he has time to take longer strides. And then in the slower tempo, ask him to take slightly longer strides without getting quick. And part of the way that you define that is with your post. Good. Staying in the air. There you go. You see how she stays in the air longer and pushing him to slightly longer strides. Now go back to the little trot again. Yep, beautiful. You see how she got the tempo slower there. As soon as your horse gets quick in the tempo, go back to a tempo that's too slow so that you define to your horse what tempo you want in the longer strides. So you can feel how you're rising and sitting. Try to maintain this speed of your rising and sitting as you push to slightly longer strides. Good. Good. Beautiful. Tell him good boy. Very good. Now that was a little bit of a change there, so let's once again go back to a slow tempo so that in time, he has time to bring his hind legs further and further. Good. Under the body. Feel that too slow tempo, even slower, just so we really can see a huge, good difference. Good. And in that slow tempo, try to cover more ground with each step. Nice, nice, nice. Good, good, good. And you can see the trot starting to develop. And again, just several transitions like that. Too slow. And your goal is to maintain the same slow tempo by your rise and sitting in the posting trot as you close your legs and ask for slightly longer strides. Good, that was a nice transition. Yeah, good, good, good. And again, slow, good. So really many, many transitions to mark the tempo first, then make the strides longer. Good, and again. And push to the longer stride. Good. You can see he's getting closer and closer to tracking up. Why don't you change direction? Do the same thing on the circle the other way. Too slow with the tempo so that he doesn't think, oh, when you close your legs, I just go tritty-trotty faster. We want to tell him this is the tempo I want you to go in, whether you do short strides or long strides. It's in this tempo. Good. Good. Excellent. Now push that to slightly longer strides. In the slow tempo, close your calves. Longer. Good. And then he got a little quick. Perfect. That's what I wanted to see. She pushed toward longer strides. He got quick, so immediately slow down. I want to see the mistakes as well as the right things. Slow. Good. There's your tempo. and then longer strides in that tempo. And don't be afraid to ask him for longer strides. If he gets quick, you just tell him by slowing him down again that's not what you want. You want the slower tempo. Good. Trot's developing nicely. Good. Very nice. Once more. Slow. Can you feel how much slower, Megan, that tempo is? So in this exercise, your goal is to have this tempo in the longer strides. And the only way you can do it is to continue to ask. Beautiful. There he goes. Yeah, and anytime he gets quicker, you just immediately bring him back to the slower trot. Okay, let's give him a little walk break. It's very hot out today. Pet him for that. So people, don't be afraid to make a mistake, because it's in making the mistakes that you can really teach your horse. No, no, no. When I close my legs, it doesn't mean just go faster. It means take longer strides in that slower tempo. So first define the tempo by going too slowly. Ask for the longer strides. If he gives you longer strides in the same tempo, which you can tell because your rising and your sitting will stay the same, all of a sudden you won't be going up, down faster. If he gives you the longer strides in the slower tempo, praise him. As soon as he starts to run again, just bring him back to the too slow trot. So you can define your tempo first and then push to the longer strides. So that's little bit by little bit how we develop the working trot. Then, once we have a good working trot, remember, that means the rhythm is regular, there's enough power, doesn't have to be huge, but sufficient power that you wouldn't have to rev your horse up to get a little bit of a lengthening. There's enough power in the trot for that. And the horse tracks up. Those three things. That's a good working gait. Once you have a solid working gait, you want to start to develop the lengthenings of the working gait. Lengthenings are developed from working gaits. We'll talk about collected, medium, and extended in another session. But what you want to start to do with a horse that by nature doesn't have a big trot is do what we call little rubber band exercises. Now it's going to look very similar to the exercise you just saw, but what you just saw is that we made a slower tempo, and then we asked the horse to come up to a working trot in the slower tempo. And then we slowed the tempo down again if he got quick, and then we asked him to take longer strides, so we finally got to working trot. As we do this exercise on a circle, we're going to start with the working trot and just do 5 or 6 strides longer trot back to working. So before we were working on this side, the little side of working, now we're going to work on the bigger side of working. So we push toward a little lengthening for 5 or 6 strides rising, and then with your tummy muscles and your outside rein, you come back to normal working trot, and it's just a rubber band exercise. 5 or 6 strides longer, working trot, 5 or 6 strides longer. So just demonstrate that for a second. So this would be the next step. First and foremost, you have to have a working trot, which is what she was just working on. Once you have a working trot, you want to develop your horse's ability to be like a rubber band. Rising trot. Good. So we have a good working trot, and lengthen. Close your legs. Good. Beautiful. And shorten from your tummy muscles and outside rein, a little tweak. Beautiful. And then 5 or 6 strides again. The rubber band exercise. So that he learns that he can lengthen his frame and lengthen his stride. Now, it's certainly not a lengthening for competition yet, but you have to crawl before you walk. So we start to stretch the horse out, both stride and frame, with these little transitions. So again, when you're ready, yeah, Megan, super, tell him good boy, and then bring him back to working trot, and on the open side of the circle one more time, and longer strides. Beautiful. And working trot, and walk, and pet him. Very, very nice. For me, that would be the next step. I'm not going to ask for a full-blown lengthening with the horse that we're just developing even the quality of the working trot, but that's a nice intermediate step. Now, probably, if we were in regular training, I would leave it at that because I'd be really, really happy with that. But we're trying to show you the big picture, what you'd be doing over weeks and months. So once the horse has an ability to do slightly longer strides back to working trot, longer strides back to working trot, then we're going to ask for a real lengthening. Now, several things can happen, and Megan's going to demonstrate the mistakes that often happen. Really, truly, the balance of the horse and the lengthening should be the same as his working gait. But with a horse that doesn't by nature have a big lengthening, a lot of times they lose their balance when you ask them to give you a real big lengthening of stride and frame, and they can lose their balance in any number of ways. They can fall on the forehand, they can lose their balance and break to the canter. So what we do in these initial stages, I'm going to let you show the mistakes first, but after she shows the mistakes, she's going to ask for the lengthening in the same way, but she's going to support him a little bit and be a little bit of a fifth leg for him. So, and this is a stage, remember, so that she allows him to balance himself off her hand a little bit so he doesn't lose his balance. So you can go large if you want, or a diagonal, whatever you want to do, but I'd like you to do a lengthening that shows him falling to the forehand, and maybe just go working trot down the long side and come across the diagonal toward the camera with a lengthening, letting him fall on the forehand. So in other words, she's not going to give him any preparation, which we'll talk about in a second, the preparation for the lengthening. She's just going to close her legs and ask him to lengthen, and he's going to fall on the forehand. See, we've developed a nice working trot now. So we have permission to work on these lengthenings. And close your legs. Now we see a little bit of lengthening. Keep going. But he's a little bit hollow. You see his back is hollow, and you see the rein getting a little bit loopy. So that wasn't 100% done over his back. Do another one like that, and then come toward us and actually let him break to the canter. Go across the diagonal. And lengthen and let him fall on his face a little bit. Yep, yep, yep. So you can feel that the balance shifts to the front legs and he carries more weight on the front legs. The balance should stay the same as it is here in the working trot. Now over push and don't support him and let him canter. Okay, so he didn't want to canter, but you can see there again, his balance went to the forehand. That's okay. Try once more. Because this is a very normal thing that happens. She's not supporting him. You can see that the rein gets a little floaty. Okay, it's a pretty nice lengthening of stride, but he's a little hollow in his back. That's okay, Megan. Stay on the long side. Take up a little extra weight of rein, stay on the long side, push toward a lengthening and be a fifth leg for him and round off your corners so you don't stop for the corner. So support him, flex him a little more to the right, and ask for the lengthening and keep going, and I'll tell you when I see the longer strides, and that will be your cue to walk and pet him. And go, 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 support him. Good, good, and ho, and pat him. Just let him walk. Good, and pat him. So, although he didn't break to the canter for us, you saw several lengthenings where he was not in good balance. He had a hollow back, he shifted his weight to the forehand, and sometimes your horse might break to the canter. But what Megan did this last time is she took up a little extra weight of rein to be a little bit of a fifth leg for him so he could support himself as he was finding his balance with the longer strides. Eventually, once your horse understands that he has this second gear, you won't have to be a fifth leg. But in the learning stages, if you don't act as a fifth leg, you're going to see some of the things you saw in those first three lengthenings. A hollowing of the back, a shifting of the balance to the forehand, or maybe the horse will break to the canter. So when you get ready to do your lengthening from your good working trot, in the beginning, take up a little extra weight of rein and say, I'm going to support you. I'm going to be your fifth leg. This is just a temporary stage. And then once you understand that when I close my legs, you shift into this overdrive, then the weight of the rein will stay the same. So for me, the next step, and I've talked about this before, preparation is the key for everything. You don't really pull a lengthening out of thin air. You prepare for the lengthening. So if you're doing a dressage test, the place that you are going to decide whether you're going to get a good lengthening or not is actually on the short side before you come across the diagonal. Because what you're doing with your old friend, the connecting aids, is through at least part of the short side, you're coiling the spring of the hind legs so that the horse can just burst into that lengthening when you hit the diagonal. In other words, you want to get him bubbling over at 211 degrees, ready to boil over. And the way we do that is with our connecting aids. Don't go yet. We build the power by closing both legs, closing that outside hand in a fist so we get the longitudinal bend. And if the horse wants to bend the neck to the outside as you do that, you give some soft squeezes on the inside rein to keep the neck straight. And Megan, make sure you can hear me now. You're going to maintain that depending on how attentive he feels, either through the entire long side or maybe from half the the entire short side, or half the short side right into the beginning of the lengthening. So you bridge the transition with your connecting aids so that you're giving him two sets of aids at once. On the short side, you're saying, I want you to coil the spring of your hind legs so that you can really burst into the lengthening. You see, if he doesn't bend the joints of his hind legs, he can only burst that much. But if he really bends the joints of his hind legs because she's coiling the spring with her connecting aids, he can lengthen much more. So that's what the connecting aids do there. Then, as you're building power, you maintain the connecting aids, which say to the horse, stay connected or stay on the bit. As you soften your hands, maybe a ½ inch lower and a ½ inch further forward, because we know we want the horse to lengthen the frame. So you start the connecting aids on the short side, you keep doing them to the beginning of the lengthening, and then go across the diagonal and do a lengthening. And I know you're not going to be able to hear me down at that end. So when you bring him back to the working trot at K, what I want you to think about, and I want all you guys to think about, is that it's not an addition of hind legs into the lengthening and a subtraction of hind legs back to working trot. It's an addition of hind legs into the lengthening and an addition of hind legs back to the working trot. So even though you're bringing him back to shorter strides, you put your driving aids first to bring the hind legs under. Then you'll soften through the corner and do another set of connecting aids from A through F through the beginning of that lengthening. We'll just do 2 lengthenings like that. Okay? Ready to rip? So as she approaches the short side, she's going to coil the spring of the hind legs. Add, 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 add. Left hand is in a fist. Keep doing it. Add, add, add. Keep doing it for the first 1 or 2 strides. Well done. Allow him to lengthen his frame and stride. Good. Now close your legs. Add hind legs through your right fist and soften. Well done. Beautiful. And do it again. Add, add, add through a closed right hand. Allow him to lengthen his frame and stride. Good. Let him put his neck a little lower. There you go. There you go. Good job. And close your legs and drive to collection or drive to the working gait and then walk and pat him. That was awesome. Now, not only was that just awesome, but It was even more awesome if you rewind this tape a little bit and look at what his first trot looked like, just to give you confidence of how much you can develop your horse's ability to trot. Now, I'd like to do one more exercise with him. It seems sort of out of sequence, but because of the way we're doing things, trying to compress everything into one session. I want to give you another exercise to put in your toolbox if you have a horse that by nature doesn't have a good lengthening. And that exercise is to do progressively steeper leg yields in a very slow walk, so that you increase your horse's range of motion this way. You make him more supple through his shoulders and his hips, so that when you ask him to lengthen, it's physically easier for him. So if you could in the walk, Megan, do like a fairly long leg yield, like in the, from a little bit before R to maybe V, and then we'll do that back the same way. So you start by degrees, very systematically. It's a fairly steep leg yield, but we're going to make it steeper after she does it once in each direction. And you're going to say to yourself, long, slow, sweepy strides. Good. Turning your head toward V, because the horse, good. And rhythm. Turn your head to the letter, good girl. So he goes exactly where you look. Good girl. Yep, make it over to V. Good. 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 And tell him he's good. Relax for a second. Then you'll come a little bit before P, like Peter, to S. Same thing. So what you're visualizing is that you're stretching the soft tissue in the leg yields. You're stretching him laterally so that then he can lengthen longitudinally. And keep the rhythm with your tummy, because if he starts to jig, he's taking shorter steps. So long, slow, yeah, there you go, that was better, tempo. Sweepy steps, good mistake, the quickening of the tempo. Look at the letter S. Sit in the direction of S as if you're going to dismount off the left side. Good. Okay, so you might do a few of those. Then you're going to step it up a notch. And what you're going to do is do 3 of them. So this is going to be quite steep. So start like at M and go a little bit between S and E, then go back to between B and P, and back to between V and K. And you can even put in more steps depending on your horse, but I want to show you that you start with a fairly steep leg yield and you gradually make the angle steeper. Well done, you. Good. And keep the tempo just that slow so that he has, look how high he's crossing up on his hocks, so that he has to cross more and more. Good. Good. You're getting there a little late though to fit 2 of them in. So really go sideways now. Look at the point that you want to end up before P, well before P. Good. Open the right rein once to get his hindquarter. Yeah, there, good. If you support people with your left rein while you open the right rein, the action of the rein will ricochet to the hindquarters and then back over to K. So support with your right rein, open your left rein, take your left hand to the left, and that will shoot his hindquarters over to the right. Again, open the, yeah, good, good. Keep going like your life depends on it. Well done. Tell him good boy, rising trot, and lengthen. Or sitting trot, whatever you want to do. Yeah, you got a little nervous there, that's okay. Good, good, good. And then add to working trot, add hind legs. That was a little bit of subtraction. Try that once more. I know he's done a lot today, but just try that once more. Add, because he got a little nervous, which is normal in the beginning, and go. Beautiful, beautiful. And then add hind legs, close your legs through the right hand, good, and soften, and walk, and look at that beautiful trot, walk and pet him. Awesome, Megan, that was super. So I think you get to see the possibilities. The trot of the 3 gaits is the easiest one to develop. So we started just developing the working trot because you can't get a lengthening if you don't have a working trot. And we developed the working trot by slowing the tempo and asking for slightly longer strides in the slower tempo. Then we begin to develop that rubber band effect by doing a few strides longer, back to working, a few strides longer, back to working. Then we talk about teaching the horse that for the moment, you can be a 5th leg for him and support him so he doesn't lose his balance as he tries to search and find these longer strides in the slower tempo. And then your finished product is to coil the spring of the hind legs with your connecting aids so that all the power you need for your lengthening is already within the trot. You just have to allow it to express itself over the ground by letting your hands come an inch forward and an inch further down, which will follow the lengthening of the horse's stride. But then remember, and the second time you did that was super, the transition back to working trot is not a subtraction of hind legs, it's an addition of hind legs where you bring the hind legs more under. So everything's an addition. You add to your lengthening, you add back to your working trot. And then just as an aside, if you're still having trouble developing your trot or developing your lengthening, use some of the exercises we showed the other day, using the hills, using the trotting poles, and today we added doing progressively steeper leg yields in the walk to increase his range of motion this way so that then he could cover more ground that way. Thanks, Megan. That was a really awesome demonstration.